Hello again, Mole fans. This is Matt, your Mole Tracker, back to recap Week 2, Season 2 of The Mole on Netflix. On this channel, we take a look at the suspicious behavior of all the remaining contestants, and we rank them in order of most likely mole suspects. We've learned a lot over these last 3 episodes. First, we learned that Niche was the one who drained the pot to take the exemption. We also learned later that he is not the mole. We also learned that Quaylen is the genuine team player that he appeared to be in the first 5 episodes, but that also he is not the mole either. There's still 6 remaining contestants, and there's plenty of mole suspects, so let's get right into it. First, let's talk about some of the themes from this season. I think it's pretty clear that the color red is definitely one of the themes. We've seen red phones, a red buoy, red trucks, red gift boxes, an entire challenge in a red temple. The question is, does it mean anything, or is it just part of the overall cinematography this season? And if it does mean something, does it point to a specific person as the mole? In the first season, we figured out that the theme was gold, and we used that theme to help identify the mole as a player wearing a lot of yellow all season. Are they just trying to throw us off this year with the red theme? Are players wearing red just red herrings this season? Or could there be some significance? Perhaps it points to the redhead Michael as the mole, who knows? Let me know what you think about this theme in the comments. The next pretty clear theme is tigers. We see tigers in the cargo crates, a tiger in one of the mansions, and of course, the tiger was the correct ancient idol for both teams in the cave raid. Again, the question is, does it mean anything? Perhaps it is just a natural theme given the location of this season in Malaysia. Perhaps the tiger clues were just supposed to help the teams to pick the correct idol in the cave. I actually did some research to see if Ryan's volleyball team was called the Tigers or if any of the players were associated with tigers, but came up empty. Closest thing I found was that Deanna was in a Netflix show called Don't F with Cats, but admittedly that's a bit of a stretch to be a clue, and honestly, I wouldn't have even thought of that if Deanna hadn't been my number 1 suspect after week 1. I guess that's the danger of having tunnel vision with your main suspect. Anyway, let me know if you think the tiger theme points to anyone in particular. In general, player clues were harder to come by this year, but there were a few mentioned in the comments of my previous video that I wanted to bring up here. First, if we look at the primary mole logo with all the faces, you'll notice that it's Ryan's face that's under the letter M, and we often associate the mole with the letter M. So could that be a clue for Ryan? Someone else also pointed out that Hannah's bio lists her as a student pilot, but they don't ever really mention that during the episodes. And then there was that challenge where they couldn't find the pilot. So could that be an obscure clue towards Hannah? And finally, one thing that I noticed was in the bidding challenge, when Ari lifts the first box up to reveal the dossiers, the name we see is Deanna. Could this be pointing to Deanna as the mole? Or is this simply just the list in alphabetical order and Deanna's happens to be on top? Next, let's take a look at some of the new information we've gathered over the last 3 episodes. We'll start by looking at who the departed players suspected, as we've done before, to try to learn from their mistakes. Poor Quaylen. He was eliminated not once but twice, and I really felt for the guy, especially as he broke down crying after the first elimination. I wish more players cared this much about the game, and I was certainly rooting for him to win. Unfortunately, he didn't really help us to eliminate any mole suspects because his suspicions were all over the place. On the flip side, Niche did help us a little by listing his main suspects as Muna and Hannah. Combine that with Muna and Hannah's team player mentality over the last couple of challenges, and I think it makes sense to move them both down our suspect list. As for Niche himself, I don't think anyone was too sad to see him go after he took away so much money from the pot to bid on the exemption. Next, let's play a game of Follow the Money. This is something that I learned from the fans of the Dutch show Wie is de Mol. The theory is that the player who earned the least money and or removed the most money from the pot is most likely the mole. It's not a perfect system because sometimes the group wins money despite some sabotage attempts. They could lose money due to honest mistakes. The mole could do things to sabotage indirectly, or the mole could do something to sabotage that is not shown in the final edit. And of course, with so many players trying to act like the mole these days to draw suspicion on themselves, the data can be misleading. That being said, it is interesting to crunch the numbers. In many of the games this season, it was either all or nothing for the entire group. But for the missions listed in this table, the remaining players contributed varying amounts each time. The first thing that jumps out to me in this table is that Muna has clearly earned the most money of any of the players, especially in the recent challenges. This leads me to believe that she is probably not the mole. The next thing that jumps out to me is that Deanna has added the second most to the pot, which really makes me question her as my top choice. We knew that Hannah would be at the top of this list due to the huge amount she drained from the pot for her exemption, but I was surprised to see Michael tied with her. And finally, Ryan and Sean are kind of in the middle, with their primary sabotage each being at the gala, although they've each had plenty of other suspicious actions along the way. With all that new information, let's get to my updated rankings for this week. Did Deanna stay at the top spot, or did somebody else take her place? Let's find out. We'll start with unlikely moles. Coming in at number 6 is Muna. I think the show has tried hard to highlight some suspicious things she's done, like not grabbing the second key, but I think that was an innocent mistake. She's brought in a lot of money to the pot, and I think she's in it to win it. In my opinion, the least likely mole suspect in the game at this point. Next up at number 5 is Hannah. You could really see a change in her strategy after Tony was eliminated. She turned her attention to being a team player and has been very honest and direct in most situations and has brought in a lot of money. It will be interesting to see if she gives up the $20,000 to try to get the exemption when the show resumes, but I doubt she is the mole at this point. In this next category are players that are definitely suspicious enough that I wouldn't be surprised if they turned out to be the mole. Coming in at number 4 is Sean. It's tough to get a read on him. Given his undercover cop background, it seems like he'd be a good fit to be the mole. There have been several instances where he was caught in a lie and didn't seem very good at lying. But part of me wonders if his mole strategy was to intentionally look like a bad liar so people wouldn't suspect him. The other thing that makes me wonder about Sean is that I'm not sure that his player strategy makes sense. One challenge for the mole is that you have to pretend that you are suspicious of others, and sometimes it is difficult to keep your story straight. At the movie night, he says he's suspicious of Hannah, but then later he says Michael is his top suspect. And if Michael was his top suspect, Sean's action at the gala make no sense. He claims that he intentionally removed the photo from the wall because he saw Michael watching him and wanted Michael to suspect him. But if Michael is the mole, it doesn't matter who he suspects, and it's a lost cause to try to convince the actual mole that you are the mole. There have been several other instances where Sean said he was trying to look like the mole. For example, wanting to open the clue in the bomb mission and wanting to call frequently in the rescue mission. I'll be a little disappointed if it does turn out that Sean is the mole and his strategy was to be obvious about it, but I can't rule it out this point, and he comes in at number 4. Moving way up my list this week is Michael. I think I may have written him off prematurely last week. I didn't think the show would want to highlight the fact that the majority of the players suspected Michael in the truck challenge if he was actually the mole. But maybe it's just the opposite of last season, where the viewers were on to the mole early, but the players weren't. This time around, could it be that a lot of players have figured out that Michael is the mole already, and the viewers just don't want to believe it? The data from the Follow the Money exercise was enlightening. Michael has cost the group the same amount of money as Hannah, but he's done it in a much more subtle way, in bits and pieces, which would make a great mole strategy, to be honest. I also think the red theme could point to the redhead as the mole, as we mentioned earlier. So this week, Michael moves up the list and comes in at number 3. And that brings me to my 2 prime suspects, Ryan and Deanna. I went back and forth between the two and ultimately decided to go with Ryan as number 2. There's quite a bit of evidence pointing to Ryan as the mole, and there's a strong case to be made that she is the mole. Her strategy seems to be to stay quiet most of the time, which is naturally suspicious, and she was under the radar during the first couple of episodes, which makes sense for the mole. Plus, in the very first challenge, she got to play the hero role by hitting the final intruder with the last paintball shot. There is some speculation online that she may have gotten some help from someone off screen or from the intruder himself to make sure that the shot was a hit, which would be the perfect cover for the mole to build trust early in the game. I originally thought her sabotage at the gala was an innocent mistake that was overemphasized, but I could definitely see it as a subtle mole move. And in the bomb mission, her team was a comedy of errors, taking forever to solve the puzzle, using a clue, and after all that, panicking and cutting the wrong wire at the end. And of course, the way she answered the phone in the temple was very suspicious, wasting time and calling the clock tower a statue, and then doubling down on that statement after she was released. Also, when Q returns to the game, Ryan is the only one not clapping and she looks dejected. That could be a logical reaction to the mole. Yet with all of that, I still think there's a good chance that this is all simply her pretending to be the mole. Some of her interactions still seem like a very genuine player to me, and I haven't seen a silver bullet yet to make me go all in on Ryan as the mole. So she only climbs up to number 2 on my list. So that means, perhaps stubbornly, that I am stuck in my tunnel vision and sticking with my number 1 pick from last week, and that is Deanna. I'm not very confident, and it's probably more about hoping it is her than actually believing it, to be honest. I agree with Muna when she said that if Deanna is the mole, it would be an Emmy Award-winning performance, and I'd love for that to be the case. When you watch the episodes through the lens that you think Deanna is the mole, you can see that a lot of things she says and does can be interpreted as mole actions. For example, when it is revealed that Nish took the exemption, she says, "Just send me home, I don't even know why I'm here." Could that actually be the mole saying that this group doesn't even need me to drain the pot because the group is doing it themselves? In the truck challenge, she's the first one to state her mole pick is Muna. Was this legitimate, or was she trying to get everyone to vote for Muna, knowing that Michael was the right answer? Ultimately, the team put the most money in Muna's truck, so that worked. She's also been saying all along that she thinks Muna is the mole, but as we've talked about, it's very unlikely that it is Muna. How is Deanna still in the game if she's been gunning for Muna in every quiz? And in the bomb mission, her team cuts the red wire, which makes the bomb go off to lose the money, and yet their team just gets credit for being the guinea pigs, which could be the perfect cover for the mole to sabotage in plain sight and not gain suspicion. I also think it's interesting that she's one of the players chosen at random to be kidnapped, and that she also happens to be the player that stumbles upon the invitation and leads the discussion that sends Hannah to the lunch in the last episode. Was that all just a coincidence? Now, on the flip side, I can't explain the cave mission. That should have been a very easy mission to sabotage for a claustrophobic mole, and somehow their team won the cash and she made it all the way through to the end. And the data from the follow the money exercise does not support Deanna as a top mole suspect. So at this point, I feel like I'm going with my heart instead of going with my head, and I'm counting on Deanna just being a great mole that fooled nearly everyone. To me, that would be a very satisfying, albeit unlikely, ending to this season. We'll see. The great thing about the mole is that there are many different possibilities, and it's fun to debate everybody's different hints and theories along the way. Let me know who you think the mole is in the comments below, and we'll all find out together next Friday. Until then, happy mole hunting. Thanks for watching.